extra jalapenos, mate.
You're still listening. This is our final transmission.
Here, it's the Final Transmission podcast. It's Sam Russo and Jamie Carruthers coming at you. One horror movie a week from the dawn of time till the end of time. Jamie, my man, how are you?
Wing. I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. If you're going to spew into this. I'm doing good. I'm well. Hanging in there.
Yeah, hanging and wanging.
Yeah, you want to fucking talk about a horror movie?
I do want to talk about a sci-fi, vaguely horror comedy. How do you feel about that?
I feel like it has to be a horror movie, surely. It's the Final Transmission podcast.
I think there are enough horror elements to get it on the pod.
Los Crímenes.
Timecrimes from, I'm going to say 2009, because that's when it got
I'm going to say
wide release.
2007.
Well, it was made in 2007, but it was released to the world in 2009.
Yep. Hell yeah. And you saw it, I'm going to guess, 2009.
I actually saw it in 2008 at Fright Fest in that London.
Fond memories?
Yeah. Good Fright Fest that year.
Yeah.
I think that was the year that they pulled a Serbian film because they were going to get shut down by the police if they showed it.
Ooh, which Serbian film?
A is funny.
Yeah, people are upset by that.
It's not very good, but conversely,
I
Timecrimes,
astonishingly haven't watched it.
I think, is very good. And that's why I picked that to watch instead of a Serbian film.
Yeah, I mean, instead of thousands of films, really, if you think about it.
Well, we'll get to all of them, but we're never going to get to a Serbian film.
Is this film popular?
I think it has a small but very vocal cadre of fans, of which I count myself amongst.
Including the vocal part. I suppose you are about to talk about it for 2 hours. That's pretty vocal. So
it's directed by Nacho Vigalondo, who is a Spanish filmmaker. It's a Spanish movie, if you didn't guess by the name.
Los Crímenes. He's there's probably nothing worse than English people doing Spanish wrong. I think like when Americans do it wrong, kind of fine.
Yeah.
But when English people do Spanish wrong, it is I mean, when English people do anything wrong, it's the worst, right?
Yeah. Dos cervezas, por favor. That's it.
Yeah, just like extra jalapenos, mate. Like anything like that makes my body die.
We talked about my mum referring to quesadillas as quesadillas, didn't we? On a previous episode.
Yeah, that's pretty bad. It's not as bad. Like I'm imagining your mum's thick Welsh accent, and it's not too bad.
She doesn't have a thick Welsh accent. She's from North Wales. She has a Welsh accent, and she's thick. But
not what I meant, but fine. But then if you just put it in like my neck of the woods, put it in estuary English or Cockney, and it's agony.
Life of agony.
Quesadillas, mate. Double jalapenos on my quesadillas. It just hurts. It physically hurts me. So let's do as much of that as we possibly can. Alienate anyone.
Double jalapenos on my quesadillas is my favorite Lost Minutemen album.
Lost Minute Men. Yeah, that's not a band. Do you like the Minutemen, incidentally?
I do, yeah.
Oh, good.
Double Nickels on the Dime is a great record. I love it.
Nice. Welcome back to Final Transmission, where we've cut 10 minutes of us talking about nothing. So, yeah, our first Spanish movie. How exciting. Where have we been
right?
to Argentina.
We've been to the Orient.
We haven't been to Mexico yet.
No, we've been to Turkey.
We've been to Turkey. Turkey, eh?
Yeah,
done some traveling.
Canadians would say. Okay, Timecrimes, right? Yeah. I think it's really good. I am getting the sense from you that you didn't enjoy it very much. So why don't we get into a synopsis, which I will deliver to give you a little rest. We'll take a break and we'll come back and then we can talk about it properly, okay?
Yeah, I love that I need a break 3 minutes in. All right, let's go. Synopsis. Hit me.
Okay, Hector is a creepy little man who lives in his house on the outskirts of the woods. He sees a sexy lady through his binoculars and decides to go and investigate. He specifically sees her bare breasts and decides that he must go into the woods and have a closer look. Unfortunately, this act of voyeurism draws him into a web of murder and death and crushing inevitability
And time crimes.
and time crimes. That's the plot of the movie, Sam.
It's a pretty good synopsis there, bud.
Yeah.
Do you know when the movie is set?
I think it's purposefully designed to be timeless,
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
set completely out of time, because, I mean, the cars they look sort of late 90s to me, maybe mid to late 90s.
The van is way older. There's not many clues that put it in a fixed place in time, is there?
No, the time travel pod looks like it's from a Doctor Who episode from the 60s.
Yeah, or just space.
Yeah, the table that they buy is from IKEA. So
Great identifiers of time and place. Yeah, everyone's deliberately dressed in a way that doesn't give much away, but it's shot in a way that makes it look very, like, almost 70s, I would say.
well, yeah, it's shot on Super 16, so that's like basically like the lowest grade film stock you can get
Yeah.
at 16mm, so you can still blow it up to 35 without it looking like shit.
Yeah. Did it look great in
and
the cinema?
Like, no, it
Oh.
doesn't look great. I think like Nacho Vigalondo is an interesting director, and he is good at shot choices and doing things and making things like look good in the shot, like composing a shot. But this film is a bit of a brown grey mess.
Good actor.
I don't believe that any of the external footage had lighting.
I was going to say it looks very natural, yeah.
And when you bring that together with the sort of the fairly low grade film stock and the grading that they've done on it to make it look like a real movie, it just comes off, everything comes off a little bit flat.
Mm.
But that's not why we're here for this. I think this movie is a movie about ideas and a movie about creating and developing a flawless time travel script, which I think we can't talk about in any depth without spoilers.
Yeah, without spoiling the shit out of it.
So we should go to break and then come back and get into some spoiler-roonies.
All right. Break.
Whoa, holy shit. I guess that's why they call it Phantom Power.
All right, Sam, I'm back. Are you back? You look very
No.
back to me.
It wasn't back. I'm back now.
Why don't we talk spoilers?
Yeah, spoiler alert, time travel.
Well, before that, tell me what your sort of overall general thoughts are.
I think this film is one of the best films we've covered.
Nice.
Top 5% easily. This is a fucking masterpiece, in my opinion. I think it's total magic from start to finish.
I was worried because your energy is low and your face is the face of a man who didn't like the movie.
My face is a grim rictus of fatigue, but inside, I am absolutely... my dick is racing to the moon for this flick. This was a film that I almost immediately watched a second time, that I thought was clever, full of heart, really interesting to look at, and really finely honed in terms of scripting. It's a fascinating movie. It feels stage in all the ways that I like, but it feels filmic in all the ways that I also like. It feels super indie. A very moving and exciting time travel film, because I love time travel as a theme, and I'm quite often left cold by sappy, sentimental nonsense with a bit of time travel in it. And this is the polar opposite of all of that. Loved it.
Well, that's good. I'm a big fan. Like, I think my only main criticism of the film is that sometimes it looks a bit grey and flat.
I would say that I think a lot of people will be put off this movie by the look of the first 5 minutes potentially, and that's a crying shame. If people watch that first 5 minutes and think, not enjoying how this man looks, not enjoying how this place looks, not enjoying the low grade film, whatever, then and they move on, bummer, you missed a fantastic film. Because I do like how it looks weirdly. I find it almost pleasurably disconcerting that it's not really polished, and I really enjoy watching a movie that has like no defining sense of time play out just in a hazy mystery of where the fuck is this happening. Like, people are wearing clothes that are misleading. The vehicles are different ages. We're in a rural setting with a fucking time machine. Like, what's happening? And I love that discombobulation, and I think all of it works together. I found in my research about the film that nobody really likes Hector. They think he kind of sucks, and I think he's fucking great.
If we're going to get deep into spoilers, I mean, he kills a girl.
Sure.
So his wife can live.
Yeah, I think if I was smart enough to navigate what he was going through, which I'm not at all, no way in the moment.
Neither is he.
He did better than I did. You know, there were several occasions where I paused this and I was like, okay, hold on. So there's 3 of me and I have to save my wife. What do I do? And I had no fucking idea what I'd do. I'd have killed everyone. I've already killed myself. So I think what he pulls off is almost entirely admirable.
Yeah, no, I mean, I quite like him as a character, but I don't think he's a good person.
I kind of think he is. This is what I mean. Like,
let's not forget that he gets drawn into this web by glancing at a pair of bare breasts.
The start of every good story, Jamie, is how did I get into this? Oh yeah, bare breasts. That's the start of every good story.
What's he even looking for? Why is he saying in this? He's not looking at birds. He's looking at boobies.
Just an innocent ornithologist who happens upon a big pair of hooters.
I love a movie with like a middle-aged male protagonist.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, finally, something for us to relate to in Hollywood.
It's just like we don't see an awful lot of like ugly middle-aged men as like your lead.
I don't even think he's rough to look at. I think he looks like Tommy Lee Jones mixed with young Robert De Niro, and I'm all in. There's no bullshit Hollywood makeup and lighting here to make him look like anything he's not. And that is massively appealing to my, movie-going sensibilities. I think this guy's incredibly interesting to look at and delivers a performance that I rank very, very highly because it's fucking pitch perfect.
Yeah, I think like there's some narrative convenience as to whether he's clever or stupid.
Yeah, I want to know what his job is. I want to know what the guy's deal is. There's so many unanswered questions about his character that would normally leave me just completely lost and without connection to a protagonist. But it's hinged completely on the action and the inciting factors that unravel as he fucking travels through time. Fucking such a good film, man. I've already recommended it to like 10 people.
Really?
Yeah. There was some vicious rumors out there about an American remake with Tom Cruise, which would make me weep bloody tears, I think.
Any kind of Hollywood remake would be a bad thing.
Yeah.
Because, like, I mean, the movie ostensibly has a happy ending in that his wife doesn't die.
Yeah.
But, like, the point is that his wife always didn't die.
Mm.
And, like, everything that happens because it happened. Like, things don't change because you went back in time.
Right.
You were always going to go back in time. Like, it's just about... It's a linear story about a non-linear life.
Yeah.
And, like, so the way that it, like, teases that out is cool and interesting. But, like, in a Hollywood version of that, nobody would die. He would see his wife die, maybe, and then go back and change it.
Yeah, for it to be a successful Tom Cruise movie, some dumb bullshit like that would just be absolutely ruined.
Yeah.
And
I wonder if, like, they made Edge of Tomorrow, like, instead of him making this. I wonder if it was like, I didn't get to do my little time travel multiple Tom Cruise movie, so maybe I'll do Groundhog Day instead. Space Hog Day.
I mean, it could be. I just don't want him fucking near it. This is a really good film, and even like I saw some clips on YouTube where it's dubbed into English, and it loses so much of its spunk. Like, it has to be Spanish for my money. It's so much of it. I love the Spanish language, and I think hearing it in this movie delivered so well by a very few characters and a really small cast just lends a sense of romantic intimacy to it that I really enjoyed. Yeah.
4 people in the cast. No more, no less. That's it.
Including the fucking writer-director.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
I love Nacho Vigalondo. I think he's great. I think he's like... he's just one of those guys that I enjoy all of his movies, and one of those guys that I can just listen to talk
Yeah.
for hours in the way that I used to have with like Kevin Smith.
Yeah, just kick back and listen to that voice.
Yeah.
There's nothing, unfortunately, about this movie that I think is bad, so we're going to really struggle here. I think it's,
Well,
yeah.
let's talk about time travel more generally. So,
All right.
like,
Where are you going?
I love a circular time travel movie. I think that's one of my favorite micro genres. Is
Right.
like circular, especially if that's like low budget.
Mm.
Which, according to IMDb, this is not that low budget.
Yeah,
Like
you
about
you
$3
were
million.
yeah kicking around that 3 million figure. I mean, what are we saying is low budget nowadays? 1 million?
Yeah, I think 3 million is considered low budget, but like Shane Carruth made Primer for like 45 cents or something, right? So
Yeah, I mean 3 million sounds like a lot of money to us broke dicks, but in Hollywood, that's nothing. Obviously, I just think.
yeah, I mean this movie wasn't made in Hollywood, though, was it? It was made in Spain.
Yeah, I just mean like by
Before-
comparison, most of the movies we
Yeah.
watch are obnoxiously bloated pieces of trash where people are just hurling money into the sewers. But I do think it's fucking money well spent. Every penny's accounted
Yeah.
for in terms of viewer value here. Was it? Yeah, sorry, we want to talk about time travel, don't we? Let's go.
Yeah, so I like time travel when it's about the inevitability of time and life, and when it's about something more than just time travel. So, like, I mean, obviously, I like Back to the Future, and Back to the Future is about how cool would it be to change everything, whereas
Right.
this is about you can never change anything. Your perception or your sphere of influence is entirely hemmed in by your existence and your life.
Hmm.
So everything that you do, you've done. You can't get away from it. You can't give yourself an almanac and make your enemy the richest man on earth. Or
And make
whatever.
Biff's Pleasure Palace.
Yeah, and I think like exploring that sort of grim, horrible inevitability of life, even with, like we say, has kind of a happy ending, sort
Yeah.
of. He still has to live the rest of his life knowing that he's done these things.
Hmm.
That's it. That's the end of that.
Sorry, I'm wondering if what you're saying, if I understand what you're saying, in terms of the nature of this movie, because you're sort of implying that fate exists.
I think within the context of this movie, I'm not saying that fate exists, but everything that happens.
Yeah, but all of the action is determined by the pivotal moment where he time travels, right? That's not preordained.
He has to time travel because he made himself time travel. Because the guy with the bandages.
Yeah, but at some point
Got the
the
ghost.
original time traveling is the
But that never happens unless we're 50 loops in. Do you know what I mean? As far as I understand it, there are 3 Hectors. He always saw Bandage Hector in the woods. He always
Right.
saw the boobs. He always got stabbed by himself. He always time traveled, went back, made the girl get her boobs out, stabbed himself, and then became Hector 3. Like, that always had to happen in order for the movie to exist. Because there's no loop where something else makes him time travel. Because then there would be more than 3 Hectors. There would be infinite Hectors.
infinite hectares. I'd be up
Yeah.
for that. So yeah, I don't think I fully understand it, to be totally honest. I don't understand how there isn't an inciting moment of time travel, how there isn't a first time travel.
Well, I think like it doesn't matter because the point of the movie is that everything that happens.
Yeah.
Not like happens for a reason. It's just like the things that you do, you've done them and you can never change them.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's definitely a strong message I picked up. Less of the like deterministic, fate-based fatalism that everything is kind of preordained, I guess, but much more of the vibe that you can work as hard as you possibly can with every ounce of strength you have and every last breath in your body to alter a course of events that you've sent into spiraling cataclysmic motion, but you can't. You can't undead the dead. You can't unring the bell. So hold on, Hector 1, OG
Yeah.
Hector, goes back in
Yeah.
time 1 hour and then makes himself go back in time.
He has to. Because
I don't know if
otherwise
that
he
makes
wouldn't-
any sense.
He has to because if he didn't go back in time,
Yeah.
then he wouldn't be there to make himself go back in time.
But he is.
Exactly. So that's why it's, I think, the fate, the deterministic side of things, because he sees himself in the woods, he sees the boobs, he sees everything exactly as he makes it happen later.
Yeah. So
It's the Bill and Ted.
But
Let's
that's
go back in time and put the keys here, so
Yeah,
we can just get in.
so we can get in, yeah. But that's a choice. So let's postulate a divergent hypothesis. Okay, Hector 1 sees those buboes in the woods, and he travels back in time, and then just drives away.
But he can't.
Why?
He would stop existing.
Yeah. I thought that was the point of the movie, that he had, in order to kind of self-create his own existence from that moment on, he thought he had to recreate those events to make all of that happen. Because there's an alternative theory that, you know, as time splinters off, the woman in the woods in the original scenario, in the Hector 1 scenario, isn't being made to undress by Hector 2. There's something else happening there.
If she's not being made to undress by Hector 2, then who stabs Hector 1 in the arm?
Exactly. Hector 3.
So in that scenario, there's a different masked killer.
Yeah. Yeah, I read a scenario where there is... So what's happening in the woods is like an inciting incident for the whole movie that we don't ever fully understand. That there's something... A woman is being somehow, in some way, coerced into doing something she doesn't want to do, whether she's being robbed or undressed for other reasons. And then, by going back through time, Hector 1 interrupts that cycle and creates a whole new time loop.
I don't buy that. And that's specifically because of the scream when she bumps into Hector 3, which we hear in the Hector 1 loop and in the Hector 2 loop.
Yeah.
So that
Her
must
scream.
have happened every time. When she wakes up
Yeah.
and then runs away and meets Hector 3,
Yeah.
and then they go to the house, or they hide for a bit, and then they go to the house, and then she dies.
Yeah.
Like, she screams when she bumps into him, and we hear that scream exactly the same in the first loop. When Hector 1 gets stabbed, shortly afterwards we hear that scream, and then when Hector 2 stabs Hector 1, we also hear that scream.
But we don't...
And then
Yeah.
when Hector 3 meets her, that's the scream that we hear. So that always happened.
But
So
isn't
nothing
all of
has
that a
changed.
consequence of Hector's time travel?
Yeah, but everything that happens is a consequence of Hector's time travel.
Not if the first scenario has nothing to do with Hector, it doesn't.
But if the first scenario doesn't have anything to do with Hector, then how does Hector stab himself?
Exactly.
You're talking nonsense. This theory doesn't hold up.
Well, I just don't think I understand this version of time travel. Because if Hector 1 time traveled and then drove away, I still don't fully understand what happens.
If Hector 1 time traveled and then drove away,
What if he
then-
was like, do you know what? Fucking A, I don't want a wife. See ya. And we get a completely different side of Hector, where he's not like furious that there's quote unquote another man in his house. He's just happy for a second chance. And he's just like, Valencia, here I come.
he couldn't drive away because then he wouldn't have gone back in time, and therefore he couldn't drive away. So he has to do everything exactly as he's seen. That's why my favourite moment in this movie is when Hector 1 is in the woods and he sees Hector 2 like looking at him with his fake binoculars.
Yeah.
Then when Hector 1 becomes Hector 2, and he's just doing that because he can't get the timing right, and he just keeps doing that turn with his hands up. I think that's my favourite part of the whole movie.
I think it's both, that part is both very scary and very funny.
Yeah.
Painfully, all of the above. 3 Hectors in one timeline, man. It's a lot to keep track of.
Yeah, well, luckily, we only spend our time with one Hector.
Yeah.
But he is Hector 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
But because of the way that the film is linear, because we're only spending our time with this one character, I think that's how it manages to work.
I think this whole time loop paradox theory has actually thrown me off, having that zoomed out perspective of everything happening at once. Do you know what I mean? Maybe that would be helpful for me to realign. Do you want me to read you the piece of the theory that threw me completely?
Like, sure. I mean, I already just don't buy this theory. But
Yeah.
Go ahead.
In Timecrimes, Hector is caught in a time loop with no initial beginning or end, which is consistent with a predestination time paradox. but does beg the question how the paradox may have originated in the first place. One solution to the problem could involve a scenario in which an original attacker, not Hector, knew about the girl's bicycle route and so lay in wait for her by the path to the woods before assaulting and forcing her into the woods, where she is made to undress and then rendered unconscious.
Like, but if that's true, then where is this person during the time loop?
I think the idea is that Hector scares her away by blundering into the scene. He hides and attempts to stab Hector, but only succeeds in slashing his arm. And what that does is plant the idea in Hector that he has to do that to himself.
Yeah, no, I don't buy it, because he also sees the guy with the bandages
in that
the
scene.
coat. Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's like he then becomes the bandage guy to fulfill that prophecy that he thinks he's created.
He only finds the coat in the bin that gets knocked over, and the bin gets knocked over by the truck that Hector 3 drives.
Yeah.
So that couldn't happen to Hector 2.
Why?
Hector 2 couldn't find the coat because Hector 3 wouldn't have knocked it over.
Why?
So Hector 1 sees the guy with the bandages on his face wearing the coat, right?
Yeah.
The coat is in a bin that has not been knocked over by a truck that Hector 3 was driving.
Okay.
In the initial in this theory's posited timeline of an initial attacker,
Right.
who also just happens to have bandages on his face and the exact same coat.
No, I think it's
He can't have this. So Hector 1 sees the bandage guy with the coat, right?
right.
Hector 2 can't. That can't be Hector 2 if the inciting thing isn't Hector 2. Right?
This is such compelling content. No, I don't understand. I'll be totally honest.
So
I can't envisage either of the scenarios working logically. My brain is just like, no.
So if there's a third party, the third party would have to have bandages on his face.
Yeah.
And the coat, right?
Are you saying that because does Hector see who stabs him?
Yes.
We know that for certain.
Yeah, he does the thing
Okay.
with the eyes. He sees him through the binoculars and he does that. So if Hector 2 doesn't exist at this point because Hector hasn't travelled through time, then it can't be Hector 2 that does this.
Was that a question?
So the theory is bunk.
Then I don't understand how the paradox is ever created.
Because
By the way, none of this is detracting from my enjoyment of the movie whatsoever.
no,
It's just
I think
there has to be a causal element to a paradox, right?
the causal element is that he always travelled through time. That it's a loop. So like, it doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, but a time loop has to be created, right?
Yeah, but it's
Yeah.
created by
Time
Hector
travel.
2. Yeah.
Yeah. So the
So, like-
initial time travel has to happen, right?
Yeah, and it does. We see Hector 1 get into the thing because Hector 2 forced him to do it.
Okay.
So, like, there is no inciting thing that happens that doesn't involve a future Hector.
Yeah.
That only doesn't make sense if you're actually paying attention. Like, if you're having this conversation,
Yeah.
is when you realize that doesn't really make sense. But in the context of the movie, I don't think it matters.
No, it doesn't matter in the slightest. And I think turning your head around 360 degrees and making your brain do backflips and turn itself in knots is literally all the fun of time travel movies. It's not about like, oh, how cool would it be to go back and get the sports almanac? It's everything else. It's the mind-bendy stuff that's the most fun. And it makes you work for that emotional resolution harder, which I like.
My favourite Hector moment
Yeah.
is, well, I have two favourite Hector moments. The one is Hector 2 doing the thing.
Yeah.
And then the other one is Hector 3 getting out of the time machine and being so completely over it and being like, yeah, I've done this before. This is fucking easy, mate.
So hold on, which Hector saves the day? Which Hector survives and walks away at the end?
Hector 3.
It
So
is
Hector
3.
Hector 1 is only Hector 1 until he gets into the time machine.
And then he becomes Hector 2. Yeah.
And then when Hector 2 gets in the time machine, he becomes Hector 3.
Yeah.
But we only spend our time with one Hector.
Yeah.
The same Hector all the way through.
Yeah.
If you don't dig into the actual sense making of it, it's so genius and like tightly written. Nothing just happens just to happen. Every single thing that is written in that script that is present on the screen is there for a perfect reason to get you where you need to be.
Yeah, there's
And-
absolutely no filler in this. No fat to trim off
Yeah.
whatsoever.
Yeah, they got rid of all the wheat.
Yep,
They-
got a big old barrel full of chaff. It's almost so tightly written that, I mean, there is literally nothing to throw away from this. There's no moments where you think,
No.
come on, get on with it. It's so tense without being melodramatic, and it's
Yeah,
so
it's like
taut.
genuinely quite funny.
Yeah,
Constantly.
yeah,
Even like darkly funny at the end, like the thing that him killing this girl is kind of a joke.
yeah.
But what a movie. What a great movie. Did you know that the girl didn't even appear in the script until the 5th draft?
Really?
Yeah, so there were 4 drafts of this movie that exist without the girl character in it.
Wow, what replaces that whole thread?
Literally. Like, I think there might have been 30 drafts of this movie.
I can imagine. So he gets to the 5th draft and he's like, got it, boobs. Nailed it, guys.
Oh, wait, I'm
what was I
Spanish.
thinking? yeah. Just remembered I'm Spanish. Yeah, I think the boobs in this is probably, and again, you know, I could be wrong here, the most fantastic use of boobs that we've covered, because it serves the plot in a foundational way. It's fundamental to this movie that girl gets her boobs out, and we can't say that about any other movie we've covered.
It's true. It's absolutely true that these are the most non-gratuitous boobs
Yep.
in any movie ever, I would say.
The most useful boobs in the history of cinema.
Yeah, that's me and you.
It's astonishing. And again, like, it's not funny in the moment. When Hector is watching this girl undress in the woods, it's not funny, right? It's supposed to be a little bit uncomfortable, I think. So it only becomes funny after it goes through phases of being horribly menacing and dark. When he's forcing her to take the top off to fulfill this time loop, it goes to a really dark place. So it starts off slightly unnerving, then it becomes dark, then it's hilarious when you think back on it. It goes through this whole comic tragedy wave to bring you to a place at the other end where you're like, oh, this started because he was looking in the woods and saw some boobs. It's wild. And we go through so much growth and weird, strange, bizarre character development and portrayals of different sides of this character, Hector, in the weirdest and most interesting ways, because the film takes place over like a couple of hours in theory, right?
So also, we see Hector becoming objectively a worse person every time he travels. So
I don't know.
Hector 1, he's just like, oh, I want to go look at these boobs, so I'm going to go into the woods.
Yeah.
Hector 2 forces this girl at knife point, basically, to take her clothes off.
Yeah.
Hector 3 kills her by throwing her off a roof.
Correct.
So like we literally see the trajectory of like how much worse you can get as a person.
The more you time travel.
Yeah. So like,
Well-
don't do it, Marty.
Yeah, that's a read, definitely. Like, time travel is fucked because here's the scenario, case in point. But what about the argument that Hector is fully in do what you gotta do mode?
Well, yeah, no, he is. I
And
think,
is
like,
it selfish to do those things, is my next question.
Yeah, I mean, it's selfish to kill somebody else
To save your wife's life.
to save your wife. That is, I would say, almost the definition of selfish.
But isn't there, I don't know, I'm not seeing, this is my American Psycho moment, I'm not convinced it's as selfish as everyone seems to make it out. It seems more romantic to me.
Romantic, it can be selfish.
Sure, almost entirely and all the time is. But there's something about his motivation that makes it less immoral to me.
Like,
On first watch,
I think
this isn't
I
going to
can
age well.
see that. I can
Yeah.
see that, but like, I don't agree.
I'm not saying I agree with his actions. I'm saying as a more sympathetic viewer, I think what I see in him is he doesn't have like he's not like a bloodlust guy. He's not. I think he kills that girl the best way he possibly can, given the circumstances. It's
The funny thing-
it presents a tough moral picture to navigate.
The funny thing for me is that Hector 1 time travels and becomes Hector 2. Hector 2's job is to try and get Hector 1 into the time machine.
Yeah,
And then by the end of it, Hector 2 is like, fuck, I need to change the past.
Yeah.
So in becoming Hector 3, he's trying to change the past, but he makes the future or the thing happen that he saw happen anyway. So like, it's just fun.
It is fun, and I don't understand anything you just said.
You look like you're about to have an aneurysm. Are you okay?
I've had 5. What I need to do is watch this movie on a stage on 3 different tiers. Like literally a 3-story building with this film all happening at once. So then what happens to Hector 3?
He lives the rest of his life, presumably with an alibi for killing this girl, because his wife was with him the whole time.
He's like, bro, I've got 3 people to give me an alibi. My wife, Hector 1, and Hector 2. So hold on. Hector 3, okay, just bear with me because I'm dumb. Hector 2 and his wife are on the deck chairs.
No, Hector 3 and his wife are on the deck chairs.
Get fucked. Hector 3.
Hector 2 is the one that yanks at her shoe and she falls off, and then he runs back to the time travel place and goes back to time and becomes Hector 3.
Yeah, so Hector 3 and his wife are having a lovely time on the deck chairs. Hector 2 is freaking out because he thinks he's killed his wife. It's actually the dead girl. Hector 3 has already orchestrated all of this, right?
Yeah.
Hector 2 runs off and jumps in the time machine. And at the moment he goes into the time machine, what the fuck happens to Hector 2?
He becomes Hector 3.
But how does that happen in physical space?
He comes out of the time machine. No, he comes out of the time machine an hour earlier.
Yeah.
Does all the stuff that Hector 3 does.
What happens to his wife?
And then carries on with his life. What do you mean? Hector 2 always becomes Hector 3.
Yeah.
So at the end of the movie, after they finish sitting on the deck chairs and they stand up and go watch
Crack on
Telemundo and eat some paella, they carry on living their lives. But, changed.
And that's when the loop ends.
Yeah.
So it's not really a loop.
No, it's linear. Like it'll continue to loop forever because the moment that they were looping will continue to loop. There'll always be a point where Hector 2 and Hector 3 are together in the house.
But that's in the past.
It is, yeah. So like the loop ends, but the loop also carries on forever for the people that are in the loop. Once Hector 2 gets into the time machine and becomes Hector 3, Hector 3 stops being Hector 3 and just becomes Hector.
How?
Because there aren't 2 other Hectors anymore.
Where do they go?
But they become the next one along. So Hector becomes Hector 1, Hector 1 becomes Hector 2, Hector 2 becomes Hector 3, Hector 3 becomes just Hector again. Hector 1, 2, and 3 will always exist in the time loop.
But the time loop has an end. It doesn't continue. It becomes the past with the resolving moment of Hector one of them Hectors just cracking on with his wife.
Yeah, but
so it can't go on forever.
Hector 1, 2, and 3, the loop is infinite.
It can't be.
Okay, for Hector 1 and 2, the loop is infinite.
It can't be because they, like you said, they cease to exist when they become Hector 3.
But they don't cease to exist. Hector 1 becomes Hector 2, and he influences Hector 1 to become Hector 2. So that loop, theoretically, that loop has to carry on forever.
But it can't because he then gets in the time machine again.
Yeah, but for Hector 2 and Hector 1, that section of their loop carries on forever. Because Hector 1 sees Hector 2, gets scared, goes in the time machine, becomes Hector 2, scares Hector 1. That Hector 1 goes into the time machine, becomes Hector 2. He scares Hector 1, time machine, 2, 1, time machine.
So what
2,
what
1.
breaks that cycle then?
Nothing. That cycle exists forever. For those in that moment, that cycle is forever.
How can you say something like, in that moment, that cycle is forever? You are killing your father, Larry.
But you understand what I'm saying, right?
Nope.
A Hector is always entering the loop, and A Hector is always exiting the loop. So there's just an infinite string of Hectors entering and exiting this linear narrative.
No. You're done. That's your third strike. I know you didn't know about the first 2, but that's your third.
But I stand by, in order for the resolution to happen, there has to be an infinite number of Hectors entering this production line and exiting this production line.
I wish I knew how to articulate why I disagree, but that's my stance.
The thing that I love is that, like, because it's linear for this character that we spend the movie with, for the Hector that we spend the movie with, who is,
Don't even start.
As far as we know, the original Hector.
He's not the original Hector.
How is he not the original Hector?
Because he's lured into the woods by pre-Hector.
Well, there you go. So there must be an infinite number of Hectors.
No.
But I think it's such a shame that the girl on the bike has to die.
Why?
She's just so nice.
She's lovely, yeah.
Like, she's really nice to Hector.
Yeah, there's innocent casualties here for sure.
She's so nice to Hector.
Don't even. Just, she's nice to Hector. There's only one Hector. It's a miracle of filmmaking that the exasperation you feel trying to understand the film in no way detracts from your enjoyment.
I think it's part of it. I love like this sort of theoretical nonsense of just like, I think I'm really comfortable with it. Obviously I saw this in 2008. I've had a long time. I watch this film maybe once a year.
Yeah. I've watched it once
and
and had like one work day to digest it, and I've just been flying around in circles in my mind in the most enjoyable way possible, in the way that you do with any good mystery or good thriller or, you know, heady scientific theoretical time travel figure eight mega loop handcuff nightmare. And yeah, I think I'll gradually ease towards some kind of general comprehension of what happens in the film, but not fully understanding just doesn't fuck with my enjoyment at all. I just think this is one for the ages.
I think and that's because we spend our time with a single Hector.
Yeah.
With glimpses of other Hectors along the way.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it digestible.
Yeah.
You don't have to think about the infinite Hectors that exist in the periphery.
Not to just enjoy the film, no. Not to just get from the start to the end of the film and basically understand what happens, yeah. We should have said that first.
That's it. I think the edit of the podcast is going to be that sentence.
Yeah, done. This is a reel. It's not even a fucking podcast. It's a 15-second bit of content. I think the coolest thing about the movie is that he only time travels a very short period of time. It's I got an idea for a movie by the Vandals where the kid can fly but only an inch off the ground for not very far. It's great. It's such a wonderful device, and especially for this character who is just, as far as we can tell, a total everyman thrown into the most ridiculous, high-stakes, stressful scenario.
Look, what man wouldn't wander into the woods at the sight of a pair of boobs, force a girl to take her clothes off, and then throw her off a roof? Like, which of us could truly say that we wouldn't do that?
Oh my God, he does that. You're stripping a lot of his motivation down to a nub. But yes, yes, Your Honor, Hector did those things.
Right, Sam, break. We'll be back in a minute to fucking end this.
Will you give it up, man? Nobody's out there. We're alone. Oh no, there's somebody out there. I'm picking up all this crosstalk.
Speaking of peaks and troughs, tell us about the Red Scare backed Sam Russo and Elway tour that will be taking place in May, the month of our holidays.
I didn't even realize we were recording. Yes, I'm going on tour with Elway. Sam 1 is going on tour with Elway in May in the United States of America and Canada, beginning in Colorado, culminating in Montreal. I'll be there. If you're anywhere nearby, you should be there too. You can get tickets at redscare.net or go to any of my social media platforms and find them there.
If you can't, go back in time.
Go back in time an hour and try again. It won't be any different.
Go back in time an hour and don't listen to this podcast.
Go back in time 4 hours and don't listen to this podcast.
See, so if you got to this point and you were like, okay, I've got the capacity to go back in time 1 hour and not listen to this podcast.
Yeah.
You would go back in time an hour and not listen to this podcast. But then
you would have still listened to the podcast.
Let's say you go back in time 1 hour and be like, hey, Sam 1, don't listen to the podcast.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, yeah.
So then Sam 1 doesn't listen to the podcast and therefore doesn't go back in time.
This is all
Tell
hinged
Sam
on the
1
idea that when you travel back in time, you travel to a part of time that's already happened and find
Yeah.
yourself there. Whereas,
Well,
you know,
in the context of this movie,
that's what happens. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. In the context of Back to the Future, particularly when you travel forward in time, it's a different time. Or you overwrite time
By
with
going
new
back.
time.
Yeah, and then you go forward to that. Yeah. But what about the theory of time travel that if I go back in time, I just inhabit my space in time from that moment onwards? There is no other me.
So if you went back to 1955, what would happen? You would just be like a little zygote.
Yeah, I would just spiral into the abyss because I wouldn't exist. My consciousness would
Well,
just
then
vanish into the stars.
So time travel beyond your own lifetime can't exist.
In that theory, yeah. Bummer.
Yeah.
Absolutely pointless. That's
Why
called
do you think
rewinding your life.
Yeah, that's just killing yourself, but with science. Science also invented guns.
Correct. Yep. Easier to get hold of than a time machine.
Yeah. Imagine inventing the time machine and being like, oh my God, I'm Jeff Goldblum in The Fly and I've invented a time machine.
Yep.
I'm going to get in it to prove that it works. And you travel to a year before you were born and you just explode into fucking the infinite depths of space because you can't inhabit your existence.
Yeah. Your consciousness just drifts in the abyss forever.
Also, in that theory, let's say you travel back to when you were 5. You just have to live your life over again.
Yeah. Up until the point that you time travel, then you've got a really tricky decision to make.
But what have you forgotten by that point?
Yeah.
Because you've had, 34 years of living your life and you think, when I was a kid, I thought I was from the future. What a fucking idiot.
Exactly. Loads of people think that. It's probably a thing. This is probably what time travel is. It's just rewinding. That's why people have deja vu. It's why people think that they're reincarnated. They're not. They just keep time traveling back to a certain point.
If you had the chance to time travel to a certain point in your life, would you do it?
Yeah, sure. I'm not going to say no to that.
What point would you pick?
Day one. Just do it all again.
Fuck that.
Immediate, straight out the fucking... I'd go back to the fucking womb. Start from there, mate. Not even born yet. Absolutely. Let's go. As long as I don't have to have this consciousness. As long as I can just, literally start all over again.
You will have your consciousness. The consciousness of a 40-year-old Sam Russo.
No, I don't
coming
want
out,
that.
Coming out of your mother's vagina.
I don't want that. I'd probably go back to, in that case, 16, and I'd just...
Yeah, I think 15 for me.
Take robust notes and do the fucking Farmer's Almanac or whatever the fuck. Make some bets on what crops are going to be big this year.
Put all my money on chaff.
Fuck! I knew I was getting that wrong. Put it all on chaff.
Bye.
Hector had time to put a cheeky bet on in that time loop, by the way.
I guess, because he didn't, within that time loop, he didn't ever see anything, so he wouldn't have anything to put a bet on.
True.
Because he wouldn't know what won anything because he didn't engage with anything beyond the time loop.
No, and something would have had to have happened in the space of an hour that he could have bet on, and he would have had to get there, put the bet on, and then not die or kill his wife.
Yeah.
He had priorities. Competing priorities.
Another thing, it's just popped in my head,
Go on.
that debunks the mystery killer inciting him to get into the time machine the first time is that Hector 2 calls Hector 1
On the phone.
on the phone.
I still don't understand how any of that debunks it, but I agree.
But so somebody else from the time travel facility must have rang Hector. If there's a theory where Hector 2 isn't the person doing this stuff yet, then somebody else must be.
It's just the guy that stabs him and runs off, and then he's gone.
So, but that doesn't work.
As you keep saying.
Because if the theory is there's a different guy that stabs him, but there's still a time loop that's been happening this whole time, then why would there be a different guy?
There isn't. In that theory, there isn't a time loop. Hector gets stabbed by like a would-be assailant who then runs away because Hector busted him.
Yeah. And then Hector becomes that would-be assailant because he thinks that he has to.
Yeah.
So who rings Hector 1 at the very beginning of the movie from the time travel facility?
Hector 2.
But Hector 2 can't because he doesn't exist yet.
Yeah, good point. That is the debunker. Unless unless it's
So I would
unless okay, so here's the deal. The scientist stabs Hector, runs to the facility and orchestrates the entire thing.
Yeah, I feel like he just wrote the Tom Cruise version.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what would happen. And in that version, it is his wife or whatever who's riding the bike. That's the big tragedy.
Yeah.
Horse shit.
God, Sam, I've got no idea how I'm going to edit this.
Time travel?
But I'm going to go back and tell Jamie 1 to keep it brief.
Yep.
And while I'm doing that, you're going to give me your final thoughts and your score for Los Crímenes.
Los Crímenes. I think when you go back, can you also tell Sam 1 to watch this a week ago so that he's got time to form a cogent opinion?
I'm not going back a week. Far too much can go wrong.
I end up doing a different movie. All right, here we go.
If I went back a week, where would I go? Because I spent all of my time in my apartment, so I couldn't come here because
You'd
would be
there.
here.
You'd be fine with it. You know enough about time travel that you'd show up and be like, look, you knew this was going to happen, bud. I had to come back because of some podcast shit. We're going to have to just coexist until one of us stops existing for some reason. Don't ask too many questions. We both just exist. Let's just go with it. I'm going to give this movie 10 hectares out of 10. I think this is an absolute masterpiece. There's nothing that I don't love about it. It's got oodles of rewatch value for me, and I imagine for lots of people for lots of reasons. And it's just unfuckwithable. I don't need to say much because I think we've said it all. I just rate this incredibly highly. I think it's superb.
I completely agree. I think it's so just perfectly crafted. Nothing is wasted. Everything is serving a purpose, especially the boobs. And there is nothing gratuitous that happens in this movie at all.
No.
Every single thing serves the narrative and the greater story that it's telling. And it's basically perfect if it didn't just kind of look a bit like ass.
Yeah.
In some scenes.
Yeah. Is that impacting your rating?
I'm going to give it 9,999,999.99 out of infinity.
It's not a very high rating. I hate to break it to you, bud, but anything out of infinity isn't a very high rating.
I'm going to give it infinity minus 0.2 out of infinity.
Of course you are. Yep.
And as you try and work out that rating,
it's 9.8 out of 10.
That is the movie, right?
Yeah. Yep. I totally am with you that the movie doesn't look perfect, but I think because of the nature of the film, it just doesn't detract from it. It could look way worse, and I'd probably still rate it as highly. It just
absolutely
isn't a factor.
It's so well written and so well acted, and like I say, the shots are composed really well. It just kind of looks drab sometimes because of the way it's lit and the way it's graded.
Yeah, and I'm not a fan of a drab aesthetic in a movie normally. It would impact my experience, but I think this aesthetic decision, along with this particular storyline, is essentially an aesthetic decision. You know, it's a directorial decision that just works for me. It doesn't need any slickening up. It just hits all the right spots.
Well, if you do need slickening up, I would recommend going to our social media at FT Horror Show on Instagram, TikTok, Threads. Follow us, interact with mostly me, I'll be honest.
Entirely you.
Sometimes there are photos of you.
Sometimes there's Jamie 2 and Jamie 3.
Yeah.
Hit all those sweet spots. Like, rate, review, and recommend us to
wherever
your
you're
friends.
listening to this, make sure you're subscribed and have automatic downloads turned on.
That's just good personal admin.
Go to our Patreon and see the uncut, unedited version of this episode to hear exactly. I mean, we've been recording for 2 hours.
I'm
And
so hungry.
the episode that we release is going to be an hour at the most.
Yep.
So there's an hour of shit that you didn't get to hear.
Mostly me
So-
weeping and banging my head with my fists.
Yeah, so if you want to see that in video form or hear it in audio form, you can only do that on our Patreon. 5 buckaroos per month. You get one of those every week.
Beautiful.
And that's the end, Sam. I'm going to go back and we're going to do it all over again. Infinite times.
Disagree.